So in church, we've been talking about the book of Romans, the audience, and the purpose. If you go to any evangelical church or seminary, you will hear that the book of Romans is about the doctrine of salvation, specifically the doctrine of justification by faith alone. This interpretation comes primarily from Martin Luther, who was a Catholic priest, and he was very good on the doctrine of justification. But he, I think, was guilty of seeing the doctrine of justification behind every rock and every tree. And so that's one of the reasons I think that he sees the doctrine of salvation as the primary purpose or the primary theme of the book of Romans. But is it? We see that the book of Romans was actually written to born-again believers. These are people who had eternal life. They were saved. They were born again. And in chapter 1, verse 16, Paul says that he's not ashamed of the gospel of God, which is the gospel of Christ, which is the power of God unto salvation. And most people interpret this soteriologically. However, it's significant that Paul wrote explicitly or exclusively to born-again believers. And when we understand that the word salvation can be translated rescue, or to deliver, and when we also understand that the wrath of God that Paul's talking about is a present tense wrath of God that is revealed against all unrighteousness of all men, we begin to see a different picture for the purpose of the book of Romans. I think that the book of Romans is talking more about Christians being rescued or delivered from God's temporal wrath against sin. Paul isn't just talking about how to get to heaven, how to be saved. Paul is talking to Christians, to born-again believers, and he's telling them that God is angry when we sin, even as believers. And even as believers, we can experience God's temporal wrath for sin, present tense, for all unrighteousness. And so the book of Romans was written to born-again believers to tell them how they can be rescued, how they can be delivered from God's temporal wrath against sin. And so this is what Paul's talking about in verse 16 when he says that he's not ashamed of the gospel, the good news of Christ, that isn't just about justification by faith alone that gives us eternal life. It's also about believers having God's power to escape God's temporal wrath against sin, not how to have eternal life.